In April 2022, Return Our Children Home Canada held its first annual conference in Ottawa, Ontario. One of the sessions we held was a panel involving several other organizations: iHope, an organization specializing in the Lebanese environment; Shine the Light, an organization primarily providing support to American parents; and FindMyParent.org, an organization developing tools to support the reunification of children with alienated parents, including in cases of international abduction. Several members of our Canadian network were in attendance, representing parents of children abducted from Canada and children abducted to Canada from other countries. This is a recording of that session.
So we've just done some personal introductions. We're about to start organizational introductions, and then we'll kind of open the floor and just do a round robin.
Okay.
We have a number of us here in Ottawa, Ontario, in the nation's capital of Canada, and we Rasha's in Lebanon, correct?
Yeah, she is. So am I.
I was going to ask you, you're in Lebanon too, Danielle?
Yes. So my name is Danielle Daura. So I'm American. I'm from Colorado, but I live in Lebanon. My husband is Lebanese. That's what brought me here. I am luckily not at all affected by parental alienation and/or abduction, but I am a co-founder of Find My Parent, and my connection with the cause is I would consider myself a child rights advocate. So I've worked with UNICEF before, and I've worked with national governments creating child protection policies, women empowerment, family policies. And so that is my connection, if you will, to the issue of domestic and international parental abduction.
Thank you. Thank you. I think at this point, I see Mark's also joined us, and we have the Zoom room locked down because I don't want to get Zoom bombed. But I think at this point, we can turn on permission to unmute to anybody who wants to be here. We have a number of people here in different locations, and we're forced to be unmuted, so it might be a little confusing with the audio. If everyone could do their best to stay muted until they want to contribute something, that would be really helpful. And then we'll take on the noisy channel here and do our best. Why don't we start with some visual introductions? And we are recording this session in case anyone's interested. We will post it publicly afterwards. I make some notes and so on, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. Any questions on anything like that before? Is that okay with everyone? Okay, perfect. So we're going to start with Mark. Do you mind muting your microphone? Do you mind muting your microphone if you're not speaking? I think we're okay. I do hear an echo though. Good.
It's okay.
So why don't we start by introducing Return Our Children Home Canada and what we're doing here in Ottawa this week. I'll start, and if you want to jump in, or do you want to go ahead?
Oh, just right.
No, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, we formed our organization about a year ago now. I think we launched our website in February of 2021. We are a collective of parents who came together to form this organization called Return Our Children Home Canada. We are looking to, first of all, bring about awareness about our plight and advocate for our personal cases as well as each other's cases. So we're trying to form this community where we can strengthen each other and help each other grow and educate our other communities about international parental child abductions, and also form some kind of alliance or an agreement with the government. This is our first ever conference. It's coming together pretty well, like very well, actually. I think we're all really proud of what we've accomplished so far and what we're planning on accomplishing. We want to make it as peaceful as possible because we want to bring in as many supporters as possible as well. So what we plan to do is, I think our biggest event is, two biggest events are the meeting with the Global Affairs, which I think is a really good, it's just a bonus on top of everything else, because we weren't sure we were gonna be able to get this meeting, and just to kind of advocate and put a plan forward, or an idea of a plan forward, so that it might help other parents in the future, and it might help us too as we navigate through this world trying to get our children back. And the vigil that we're going to be holding on Parliament Hill, which hopefully will send a really positive and strong message across the world. Not only like here in Canada, but like everywhere, and somehow reach our children and let them know that we are still standing and we're still fighting to bring them home. Another event that we're planning too is the embassy walk. Sorry, I forgot. The embassy walk is also really important. So we have a few embassies who have agreed to meet with us, a few ambassadors, representing the country where our children are abducted. Unfortunately, Lebanon declined. They were busy, and UAE hasn't gotten back to me, but we have a meeting with the Japanese ambassador, the Iraqi ambassador, and Paraguayan ambassador. So
Can I mention something? I'm sorry, is this okay if I mention something?
Sure.
We've been speaking with the US ambassador in Japan. So there's a good opportunity. Maybe we can coordinate our messaging as well. We work a lot on Japan.
That's
Sounds
good to
good.
know, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say our constituency, so Canada's, a huge country with a much smaller population than the US, for example. And it's been difficult for us to find all the parents who are in our constituency, parents who are working on their own cases. We're a relatively fresh organization, and so the way we've found them is by reading news stories and then reaching out to them on social media, for example. We haven't yet had much success in getting organizations to refer parents to us, although I know that's happened through a journalist or two by this point. And so we are kind of a collection of just over 20 parents at the moment, in a number of different countries, of course, each who might have one or two other parents. I think Lebanon's our biggest harboring country we deal with, but there's several with Japan also. There's a few who've had trouble with Brazil, and then it's quite scattershot beyond that. So it's a little different than in the States, where there's a large enough population that will tend to have a few people abducted to the same countries that can then help with each other. And as I'm sure everyone knows here, the ingredients are always the same, but the recipe is different when dealing with each country. So everyone's really got to learn the way that political culture, all the contacts are on an individual basis. We are primarily focused on supporting parents in Canada, so parents who are here trying to figure out how to resolve their cases. And the biggest tangible form of support that we do in that way is just holding a call for parents every 2 weeks to get together to discuss common challenges. It's emotional support, it's some legal discussion, and then we have a channel for folks to chat as well. The idea is that we can't take on the legal battle for every parent in every country, but we can provide the tools to have them network and to be able to build their own strength to be able to continue the fight that they're doing. So just recognizing that parents who are going through this, they've already lost their kids and they're already suffering and traumatized because of that. They're also required at that same moment to come up with financial resources, the legal resources to learn about abductions. There's so much demand on each of us in a moment where we're at our weakest that there's a need for a group like ours to kind of help to draw people together and give them strength. So we do a lot of that kind of work. I think that covers us.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll pass on next to iHope to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Rasha.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alec. My name is Rasha Kayal, and I am the coordinator at iHope. iHope is a civil society organization. It's been operating for a little over 4 years now. We prioritize human rights, especially for marginalized individuals, starting from our hometown and gradually spreading out. Our goal is to advocate against the violations of rights through litigation and public awareness. We're currently working in the child protection sector with a focus on IPCA. We have 3 main units. We have a legal unit, which is in collaboration with Al Ayyubi law firm. We have a social services unit, which is in collaboration with iStand and with Find My Parent. This is for awareness and empowerment. And we have a legal research unit that regularly presents updated assessments on laws and regulations, especially those governing IPCA. And it provides legal recommendations on how to enhance the general approach. In regards to IPCA, we're devoting our 3 units to fight this crime on several fronts. I can proudly say that iHope is a pioneer in strategic litigation and IPCA cases in the region. We also work on educating individuals and spreading awareness. We recently launched the first volume of our newsletter, The Legal Diary, which is intended to be a platform to educate individuals on IPCA and its causes and its damages and its obstacles. It also aims to be the voice of left behind parents all around the world through sharing their stories. So to say, at iHope, children are the center of attention as they are like the generation that's going to shape the future. So we believe it's our duty to preserve their rights and to ensure that they become the best version of themselves. And we try to do that through our child protection and inclusion program. We're also working on establishing a legal clinic that aims to serve as a starting point for the evolution of the regulations in Lebanon. And with it, we aim to enhance the application and the implementation of the regulations in accordance with international laws governing human rights, with a particular focus on children rights. So the goal is to build a global network of organizations and social and legal activists to work on several fronts, because each party is familiar with its own context and each party has a role to play. So the ties that we create, they help us move forward in IPCA cases in terms of resolving them and ultimately returning abducted children home. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rasha. Next up, I've got Shine the Light. Randy, if you want to introduce it.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Randall Murphy. I am founder, executive director of Shine the Light for Abducted Children. We empower parents with respect to domestic and international child abduction. We are a safe, welcoming, collective community of leaders who are supporting parents that face prevention concerns, and we offer caring love when your children have been abducted. And I am excited to be here with Bring Our Children Home Canada and to support them in their cause and their work here in throughout Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Danielle, do you want to introduce Find My Parent?
Yeah, can you just give me an idea? It is a very short introduction. I have a lot to say. Will I have time to mention all of it later? Just the expectations.
Yeah, what we'll do, I think, is we'll introduce just a short few, and then I do want to let, I know Martin's joined us as well, and Elena's also here. Maybe if they want to say a few words about themselves on their kind of individual behalf. And then I'm taking a note of some themes here. If you prepared some slides, I'll give you a spot there to present, but we could also make if you'd like to.
Okay, great. So let me just give you a high overview of Find My Parent. We are a tech NGO based out of the US, but with a very international team. And our core mission is using AI technology, so artificial intelligence technology, to reunite families. So we have a mobile app that literally is going to be available. It's in the Google Play Store and App Store like in the next 2 days. They just finalized, and I will share a link and all of you can download it and use it. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but basically it's a way for children and parents to find each other using technology rather than going through, lawyers, politics, all of those channels that we know don't work. We do a lot of advocacy work. We have a podcast. We have a knowledge hub on our website. We have partnerships with all kinds of professionals that we try and refer, legal professionals, mental health professionals. And we tend to do a lot of work in Japan because my two co-founders have children abducted in Japan. One literally just got access to his daughter again, physical access, like 2 weeks ago, and he's in Japan reuniting. His name's Enrique, and the other is Vincent Fichot, the French father that did the hunger strike during the Olympics. His two children still abducted. And then finally, we are using our technology, replicating it right now for larger humanitarian crises like the war in Ukraine to make sure children do not become disconnected with their families or they can be reunited quickly.
That's amazing.
That's quite a
Yeah.
mouthful of different initiatives. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exciting too.
I've just made a note of some of the themes we've got here, and the one that comes up for me first of all is about the scope of that. And I think the answer for you is maybe technology. How do you undertake such a diversity of different jurisdictions and legal frameworks and parents with different causes and children who are trying to find parents for different reasons? What is the core that keeps that focused?
Well, for us, it's very child-centered. That's our goal as an organization. We feel like children, often their voices aren't heard. It's hard to reach the children, right? It's very easy to reach the left behind parents. So the focus is on the child. And the focus is on empowerment. So we can kind of ignore when we talk about technology, what are the specific legal frameworks in Lebanon versus US versus Canada or whatever. It's all about human connections and relationships and empowering those children and parents to find each other so they don't have to rely on those broken systems, to be frank.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's maybe just take a moment for Mark. If there's anything you'd like to introduce the organizations, if you'd like to introduce yourselves or if you have anything you want to add, feel free to pipe in with questions as we go, but maybe I'll pause for a second for each of you if you want to say anything.
Yeah, so my name is Elena Danielina, and I'm also part of the Canadian Left Behind Parents. My children are right now in the United States Emirates. I have had some contact with them, but this has stopped about a month ago. There are two daughters of the age of 10 and 14, and they've been abducted from Canada since 2018. Yeah, and I think I would really be interested to know about Find My Parent organization and how the children can be or how we can get involved in it. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. And Martin, how about you?
Hello to everyone. My name is Martin Berenson. I am from Peru. My son was kidnapped from Peru in October of 2019. He was brought to Canada, and I have been out of Peru since February. So it's going to be 930 days that I am not able to see my son. The mother is here in Canada. I am in Canada now. And she is requesting to become a refugee. And I am trying to use the Hague Convention international law to return my son back to Peru, and at the same time, in parallel, to have access to him. I have not been successful with any of those two wishes. And I am in Canada, stranded, unable to work, and most importantly, unable to see my son. On top of that, I have been granted court fines that are now over $53,000, which is crazy. That's basically my situation. I do not find any local support in London, Ontario, where I am at. It is a town full of pro-women advocates, and even the judges that have my case in their hands are openly members of abused women organizations. So I see very little light at the end of the tunnel. My son was 6 when he was taken. He's now 9 years old, and he has no contact whatsoever with his parental family. Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thanks, Martin. And I think we're hearing a theme here, which is, you mentioned compassion and being child-centric, and Danielle mentioned the same thing. We take the same approach, which is that it can't be an issue about men versus women, about moms versus dads, about this country, that country. It needs to stay child-centered. And so we need to keep reminding ourselves that the children are in the center of this and that they need both of their parents.
I'm sorry, Alec. Are you saying that I was wrong by addressing the abused women reality in London, Ontario?
Martin, I think our meeting is about left behind parents. So it's not Canada focused. We're working with international organizations. So I think the goal for the meeting is to talk about what we can do here. And abuse children is another topic that is quite vast, and we're not here to.
No, what I'm saying is, my question is, did I say something wrong?
No, but we're just saying that it's the focus of the meeting is about.
You have to talk one at the same time. You cannot talk at the same time. I am only asking if I said something wrong.
I'm saying it's not the focus of this meeting, Martin. And so we need to keep the focus on.
You asked me to say what my story is, what my reality is. That is my reality. I am sorry.
Martin, I'm sorry. Can I say something? So
you can always say something. Yes, this is Canada.
Yeah, thank you. Like we said, the focus is child-centric. So if there is something that you want to talk about, there is other channels and there are other organizations. But please, let's stay focused to what our agenda is.
If I may add, I think what he was trying to say was part of why he isn't getting his child back is because the judge who overlooks the case is openly a pro-women's activist.
Thank
if
you.
I'm not correct.
Wrong. That is correct. Thank you.
If I can add one thing, though, one thing that Martin's brought to membership in our group and participating in the meetings is that we're very focused on cases where children were taken from Canada. And he's opened my eyes to another aspect of this, which is we each of us struggle with democracy in a certain way. We're trying to get Canada to be more active, to move quicker, to be more strident in its engagement with other countries. And Martin is encountering some of the same challenges, which is to say that Canadian legal system is slow, it's overloaded, it's expensive, but he's coming from an abduction to Canada, which is a different perspective than many of the parents that we deal with. And it's a different lens on some of the same problems, which is to say that he's not received access to legal aid, to supports that we kind of always assumed would be there. And the net effect of this is that the challenges faced by folks coming from other countries into Canada are amplified by not being familiar with Canada's legal system, having to pay court fees, having earned in different currencies. And that's also an important lens on things. So while we're meeting with global affairs, it's not enough. We have to also talk about systemic changes that are beyond the perspective of Canada looking outside.
You're on mute, Martin.
Okay, just to finish, I don't want to be the black duck of the meeting. What I am trying to tell this group all along is that how can you expect Canada to help you in the rest of the world when Canada does not lead by example within Canada? This is a 360. I'm trying to tell you all along. It is a circular reality. You cannot treat it like, oh, Martin, you know, his case is different because he is in Canada, his child was brought to Canada. No, this is international child abduction with capital letters and applies everywhere. So if you're Canadian, you need to ask your government, your Canadian government, hey, how do you expect us as parents to be treated fair abroad if Canada is not being fair to the parents, victims in Canada? That is my whole thing. No more to say. And I am here making a lot of effort to try to put this point across. I don't want to talk more about it. I am child-focused, child-centered, everything, but please understand this is a global issue. This is not a Canadian issue. This is a global issue. And I am fully with you. I am not against you. And I am here trying to, I don't mean to school you, but trying to set my point across out of love to my son. That's why I'm being very patient, hoping that you will understand this. And as long as if you manage this as a Canadian parents being victims, you are wrong. This is world parents in the same problem. That's what I wanted to say. And this is all coming from love to my son, and love to your realities too, that I don't want you to be going through what you are going through. That's what I want to say, okay? Take it with love and peace and no regrets, but open, please, your mind, 360. Don't look at it as a Canadian thing. Canada should lead by example. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Martin, we always understand where you're coming from. And it's never about just us, but we started without you. And when you came into our group, then we had to change our whole demeanor because we understand more now how Canada has to lead by an example and how it has to be fair in its treatment for abducted children here and abroad. We do understand you. And we're making headway, and it's going to get better for all of us, hopefully. This is a step in the right direction.
So if I can interject, so if I understand correctly, you're going to be meeting with the Global Affairs, which I assume is like the Canadian version of the State Department in the US. Yes. Very good. So I recently had a meeting with the consular in Japan, the US consular. So I think it would just be worth making sure you're mentioning both points, you know, children abducted from Canada, what are they doing for those kids, and children abducted to Canada. We tried to do that also with the embassy to focus also on domestic abductions because it's an issue in Japan. And I think that gives you a bit more also like it shows that you're willing to work for all children and all nationalities for a better future.
For sure. And that was like Martin coming into our organization opened our eyes up and it challenged us to think differently and to broaden our worldview. Whereas before we were thinking it was just like Canadian children who are abducted. And then we realized, wait, like and Randall's children are also abducted and were also abducted into Canada. So it has an added challenge, but it's not something that we put on the back burner. We have to navigate through to include into everything that we write out. And we're trying our best, like to make sure that we are for the children first and foremost and for all the children.
And I've been doing a bunch of reading just in the last few days on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And that is, it's a document that's agnostic to which country we're in. It speaks to rights that every child has that are supposedly universally guaranteed in Canada, outside of Canada, and as a signatory to the UNCRC, Canada has obligations in both senses, both to children who are here and children who have been taken away. And so one of the things that has arisen from kind of my reading of Canada's reports to the UN and the UN's reports back to Canada, and also some Senate processes to investigate what Canada's level of compliance currently is that there actually is nobody in charge of overseeing these things. There's nobody within Canada who's responsible for making sure that the domestic legislation meets the international needs of the UNCRC, for example. So in speaking with Martin about, we're doing an embassy walk. We're going to all the different embassies to which our children have been taken. But in a case like Martin's, where his child was taken to Canada, what is the equivalent? Where do we go to speak to? Where do we visit? And just in my reading the last couple of days, the UN's been pushing for 20 years or more for Canada, and I forget the title of this position, but for Canada to have a representative for the child who would essentially be that person. And we've been scratching our heads trying to find out who to go to speak to. And the answer is that person doesn't exist. And that's one of the things the UN has been pushing Canada on for, as I say, more than 20 years. So it is definitely a complicated problem. And part of what we're encountering is that the structures we need to resolve these problems just don't exist yet. So that's where we need to take it next. I'd like to make a bit of space for us to talk about Lebanon specifically, because I know a number of our parents do have
Alec,
Lebanon list,
sorry,
and I know we have a few people here who are in Lebanon.
Stephen just joined us. Hi,
Oh,
Stephen.
sure.
Hope he can hear us.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Stephen Watkins, and my sons were kidnapped from Ontario, Canada in 2009. It's been 13 years since I've seen them.
Thank you.
And Stephen, I don't know if you joined in the middle of the conversation, but we were talking about abduction to Canada, from Canada, commonalities, what work needs to be done. We were about to segue on to Lebanon, but I'm not sure if there's anything that you wanted to address before we got there.
No, sorry, I'm late joining in. I had some other engagements to do, but I'm just listening in. Great work
Sure.
what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us. Good to have you. Okay. Yes, and advocacy there, what needs to happen from Canada, what needs to happen in Lebanon, any of those issues.
Yeah.
Go ahead if you want, Jolie.
So I guess this will probably be directed more to maybe Russia at the moment, and then also Danielle, if you can chime in. But out of our group of about 20 parents, we are 6 parents who have their kids abducted to Lebanon. 2 of them have recently gotten their children back, which is really great. But I think it was more of a agreement between the families that brought them back. It had nothing to do with the Canadian government. So what are ways that we can, I guess, where does our government come into, and how do we get our message across that our governments have to somehow also work together? Because Canada and Lebanon has always had a good alliance. I don't know what to do. For me, it's going to be 7 years. There's another parent, it's been already 9 years. And we're struggling. We don't seem to have, I know Lebanon considers this as a family issue. So how can we advocate that this is more than just a family issue? It's actually a crime. How do we go about that to advocate in Lebanon and to bring government to understand this?
Well, to start off, let me address the fact that Lebanon does not consider IPCA as a crime, and why it doesn't consider it like that. It's not ruled out as a crime, and the reason is quite complex, because family law in general is considered to be a matter of personal status. And personal status is considered to be under the jurisdiction of religious courts and religious regulations. But religious courts, the jurisdiction of religious courts, are considered to be a matter of public order. So, in other words, you cannot violate them. We have more than 18 religious sects here in Lebanon. So each religious sect governs personal status according to its own regulation. So let's take child custody, for example. For Muslim Sunnis, the age of custody is like 12 years. For Shia, it's 2 for the boys, 7 for the girls. For Christians, it's 15, and so on. It's like different for every sect. And keep in mind, this is just one topic in one single country. So, and to top it off, Lebanon is not signatory to the Hague Convention. So we don't even have an international law governing this issue. So to put it simply, we cannot generalize describing the act of IPCA as a crime, because it would be in direct violation of the Lebanese public order, and it won't apply to all the religious sects. And if you can't do that, that means you can't impose sanctions on the parent who abducts the child, and therefore you can't force authorities to be involved. So it falls down to the public sector, to the private sector, such as organizations and individuals actually trying to put pressure. So this is where we're trying to work on a constructivist approach. which is because the importance of organizations lies in involving or engaging the public and engaging the community, and to have a community-based approach. And by doing that, you actually force the government to listen to you. That's if you want to do it by governments. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And that's why we're trying to work on several different fronts, one of them being a legal front, by gathering precedents, because we don't have a law that regulates cases of IPCA. So as lawyers, because we are a team of lawyers and legal activists, as lawyers, we try to look for the loopholes in the laws and regulations that we do have. Because as Lebanon, Lebanon has a hybrid system between civic and religious laws. Right. And that makes it extremely complex to deal with cases such as family law cases and IPCA in specific. So
would a move to push for laws to become civil laws in Lebanon, is that a possibility? Like,
no, that would never be a possibility, because this way they consider that you are overruling religious laws, and being one of the countries, Arab countries, that is ruled over by religious regulations, I told you this is considered a direct violation of public order. Okay. I will tell you, I'm going to tell you an example. Attorney Muhammad, when he was representing one of the clients, she was a left behind parent, she's a mother. Her child was abducted to Lebanon. And when he was representing her in court, the vibe he got out of everyone, I mean the judge, the lawyers, the clerks, everyone, they looked at him as if he was Antichrist himself. Like, what are you doing? How are you advocating for a foreigner, for a mother? And she's from a different religion. So this is the mentality that's going around here. You can't, it doesn't change overnight. You have to work on it. Maybe now till 20 years till you start seeing change. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Russia, sorry.
One more question.
Yeah.
And what are the chances of Lebanon signing, like becoming a signatory of Hague? Because I know at one time there was a discussion, they almost signed it and didn't in the end. So
again, if you want to sign the Hague, when they assessed it, when they studied the opportunities and all of that, they noticed that it would limit the authority of the judges, which are religious men, and that's why they kind of dismissed the thought, because again, it would be in direct violation of the public order, because the jurisdiction of the courts of the religious judges is related to public order.
Okay.
Thanks, Rasha. You mentioned, and also I know Mohammed's mentioned before, using strategic litigation. And I think that's kind of central to the way that iHope is doing their work. Can you give us an example of the way that looks?
Okay, so in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, they have Sharia law. And as I mentioned, Lebanon has civic and religious laws regarding personal status matter. But the legislator, he left gaps and loopholes within the laws that we were able to benefit from. So we were able to acquire precedents, new precedents, and new laws that were issued in favor of the best interest of the child. So in cases where you have two different courts that are competent at the same time, this is where strategic litigation came in handy. It enabled us to maneuver around. We were able to identify the gaps that were left by the legislator and the law, and we were able to move around it. And that's what iHope is trying to work on, to build a task force to educate lawyers on how to figure out, to find these gaps, to find these loopholes, and to actually to just like teach them how to approach IPCA cases in general. So the main focus is to build a task force to enable them to maneuver around in court in light of or in absence of laws that regulate it, in absence of precedents, in absence of an international law that should govern such cases.
That's perfect. Thank you. I want to pause for a second. I see Shelley has joined us. I'd like to give her a chance to introduce herself and say hi, if you like to, Shelley. And I'm not sure if she's not hearing us or if she's on mute. Give her a second and then we'll move on. Okay, we'll come back and see if she can say hi later. Shelley's also on our board.
And Shelley also has children in Lebanon.
Okay, coming back to Lebanon in general, I don't know if anybody else would like to speak to it from the other organization perspectives.
I mean, my perspective would, I think exactly what Russia is saying is important for the short term, which is really what you want to hear if you have children abducted to Lebanon, is how you can get your kids back. I think for the middle to long term, it's a lot of awareness and awareness in Arabic. The reality is Lebanese are a very diverse people, more diaspora outside of Lebanon than in Lebanon, than people in Lebanon than Lebanese. I'm hearing cases of Lebanese abducting their children from, to Lebanese abroad. So it is an issue that's affecting everybody. So I think a lot more needs to be done to get the awareness out in the local language. We have one podcast we did in Arabic and English with a half Syrian, half Lebanese girl who I know well, who was abducted by her father. And she did that. So I think that is really important. But we're always also going against, Lebanon is going through a bad crisis right now. So, the initial priority of the UN, of the government, if you want to call it that, of the people is how can we get food on kids' plates? How can we make sure we have electricity? These types of things. That's the life we're living in Lebanon. So we really have to push as much as we can to make sure that domestic, I would say, and international parental abduction are a priority. And the more we can also link that to the local crisis, children being abducted to Lebanon and then forced to work because the father or mother can't provide for them. I think that is also very important.
So just since you touched on that, that's what's going on with my boys right now. They're not in school. They go to the markez and Islamic markez maybe 3 times a week, and then the rest of the time they're working. And I feel like if any judge had any kind of, it's not even like whether it's humanitarian or like a compassion or even through legal views, which parent is able to provide a better life for their child, where I work hard here, and like the lifestyle in Canada is so much different than lifestyle in Lebanon. The schooling is free. So I feel like if we're looking at what's best for the child, not just in my case, but probably in other cases too, then we'd have to look at where the child will benefit and grow and develop better as well. And I think it's selfish on many judges or on the Lebanese government to say, well, we don't want our population to leave, so we're going to keep them here and not even consider sending them to their mother or their father who's abroad, who can probably provide a better life for their child. And I think that's something that also should be addressed, because I know if I were in Lebanon, I would have custody of my children. So why can't I have custody of my children if I'm not in Lebanon? Because they are as much Lebanese as they are Canadian.
Danielle, something else you touched on echoed with me a little bit too about the government's priority being food on kids' plates and electricity. And it's true, that should be first priority. But I've also heard from Global Affairs Canada, for example, we're working on this, and I'm sorry, but we're very busy with Afghanistan. We're working on this, but I'm sorry, we're very busy with Ukraine, right? And I understand limited resources within government, that's just a reality, but you can't treat each crisis as being the next in a priority list, or else no one will ever get down to cases where it's a few individual parents. They'll never solve our situation. So we always push back and say, great, yeah, now Ukraine's happening, and that absolutely should be a top priority, but you can't exclude another crisis. It's like saying that COVID-19 is a problem right now, so we shouldn't deal with climate change. These things are all connected. And when you deal with human rights, you have to deal with them holistically and as a responsibility, and not as a thing that you'll get to when you have the time.
I couldn't agree more. This is just the perspective that you will hear, the pushback you will hear. But I completely agree with you. You look at the UN here. I used to work for the UN in Lebanon, in Tripoli, UNICEF, doing a lot. But ask them to criticize the Lebanese government, yeah, then they're not going to do it, you know, but they're out there making sure kids are in school or have food on their plates. So it is a political game, unfortunately, even with UN and big NGOs, to be quite frank with you. So you just got to keep pushing and remind them. And in Japan, we would the ambassador would have press conferences about nothing related to abducted children, and we would ask questions about abducted children and make sure he remembered their children abducted in Japan, and it's your responsibility to get them back.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to link the discussion of Lebanon to what we're kind of facing in Canada, which is bureaucracy, just hesitancy to do anything. The metaphor I use is, it's like Canada would rather, it's driving a car and they'd rather take their hands on the wheel, off the wheel, than take responsibility for what happens if they steer wrong. It doesn't solve anything, but it absolves a person of a feeling of personal responsibility for making a decision. So in the case of Lebanon, there's very little control that Canada has over what happens in Lebanon, and I accept Canada doesn't have a policy of intervening in a foreign country. But from the Lebanese perspective, surely there's something that Canada could be doing that would help domestic advocacy efforts. So as Canadians who are asking the government here to become activists, what kind of activism would help in a country like Lebanon from the government?
I think if they can just like put pressure on our, like your government, Canadian government can put pressure on our government, maybe then they would like take it more into consideration. They won't as much as we would like them to, because I told you it's not regarded as a crime here. But in one of the cases when the one of the representatives in America put his foot down, so to speak, and like put pressure on the Lebanese government, things changed in the case. They were able to retrieve the child and return him home, 3 children actually, because the American government took stand and actually put pressure on our government. So maybe if your government can do the same, that would play a huge role in cases of abducted children here in Lebanon, Canadian children here in Lebanon.
And I'll say personally, that's absolutely the case for Paraguay, for example. My lawyer in Paraguay has been calling for help for 3 years from the Canadian government, just in terms of adding scrutiny, a feeling of scrutiny to the case, in the courts, with diplomacy, in any way possible. And Canada's view on this is to be, I would say, overly respectful of a foreign legal process, to say we can't be perceived as putting our foot on the scale in a foreign legal process, assuming, and very naively it seems, assuming that a foreign legal process is as pure a thing as it is supposed to be in Canada as well. And I can never decide whether the Canadian representatives are being naive that they believe that a foreign legal process deserves the same kind of respect as it would in Canada, or whether they're just trying to avoid engaging that way.
I think it's an excuse 100%. We heard the same thing in Japan. US was ready when the one American that was helped Carlos Ghosn come out of Japan, or was part of him, when he was ready to go back on the plane, he was ready to intervene. So it's a pick and choose, and I think it all comes down to money. I do know that Canada is a big donor country for the UN in Lebanon. A lot of Canadian money coming to Lebanon. I don't know if you can use that as, you know, a way to encourage them to do anything.
Yeah, I fight myself on a daily basis on requesting that or not, because like at the same time, I don't want to be that person that says, okay, we can't, like what, like it's a hard like what am I trying to say?
If I can paraphrase, I think what you're trying to say is you're asking Canada to stop donating money to a country that needs it badly,
Yeah,
to help kids, right?
to help my children, like
But your goal is not to stop them from donating the money. The goal is to make that money contingent on accepting human rights and bringing your kids home. And that's where the fact that our cases are individual cases, I think, gives us incredible power, because it's not as though the government's going to say, well, we're going to take a stand in favor of an abducting parent and forego that, $1 million in donation. We're not asking for that. We're asking them to take a stand in favor of agreements they've signed in some cases, or in favor of child's rights, and continue having that money come.
It could be an easy win for them. I mean, in their eyes, it's just 2 children, 3 children, for millions of dollars. It might be something. This is how I believe the Goldman case, he got his son back from Brazil. I think the US came in and said, return him or we're going to stop this huge trade agreement or something. Money talks at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened in the American case I was telling you about. They stopped funding so the child can go back. So it's all down to your conscience, I guess, if you're willing to do that or not.
I would. I worked for UNICEF. The money isn't greatly used efficiently. It's your children. I would never, without a doubt, say, stop the funding or giving my children. I wouldn't second guess it.
Okay. That's good to know. Glad to hear it.
We are 4 minutes away from the hour, and I'd like to keep us on schedule, just respecting all of your time and your generosity in coming to speak with us. Sorry? Oh, 2 hours. Great. Okay, we can continue for 1 more hour.
If they're up to it.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to pause for any questions or additional points before we change subjects, if that's okay. All right, and I see there are some chat messages. My phone's way over there, so I can't read them. So maybe, Elena, if there's a question that someone is raising, can I ask you to voice it for us? Okay, the next subject I want to talk about, and I'm taking suggestions here as well, is about international organizations. We have several represented here. I'm aware of many others. There's one very ambitious organization right now mostly in Latin America. I'm trying to follow along with them in Spanish language. My Spanish is quite limited, so I don't have a strong sense for what they're doing. But there's so much work required in so many countries. How does it get done in a way that's meaningfully comprehensive, while we're all struggling with funding and resourcing in our own cases and all of this? I personally think that there's a need for a very lightweight kind of umbrella to gather connections, basically, and to interconnect all of these organizations. Because, I mean, just talking about Japan, there are several. Just talking about India, there are several. Just talking about Brazil, there are several. Lebanon. And then from within each country, there's likely to be small collectives of parents. And it's very hard to find who they are and who the contacts are and what their focus is and so on. I know that I've been on a call before with iHope, and so there is some international networking happening. But how do each of you approach that question of who to speak with and how to find them?
If I may. So, I mean, it's a lot of just through networking. We have quite a large team. They're speaking different languages. A lot of through networking. I think also as a young organization, something you need to consider, and this is something we really focus on at Find My Parent, is be open to partnerships. Really, really be open, because unfortunately we find many NGOs that would be really great resources for us, but they don't want to partner for whatever reason it is. And until we all come together, and you can't have somebody forcing everybody to work together, it's not going to work that way. We don't have the time for that. So until everybody can be open saying, I don't know if your strategy is going to work. I don't know if you're really going to get the US to return kids from Japan, but you know what? I'm going to let you do that strategy, and I'm going to work on doing X strategy, because we all have our skills, and that's how we built Find My Parent. Some of us are techies. Some of us, are advocates. Some of us are great at media. We all have to bring those skills as left behind parents or supporters of left behind parents and children. And when we do that, we can really work together effectively.
And maybe I'll come back to technology as another theme here, because I know this is the first time I've spoken with an organization that's got a technical focus. And to be frank, as I was saying yesterday, I'm a big nerd, so yeah. Just to be selfish about it. So we'll come back to that in a minute, I suppose. But I wanted to ask again more broadly about partnerships and the approach to that, and how big it goes, basically. Randy, to put you on the spot, how broadly have you done that with partnerships, and how far do you reach out internationally?
It's happening now. I'm just beginning in the connections. There is the language challenge, definitely, be it Italian, Spanish, and but sometimes it takes patience too, till someone, I don't speak other languages. I have a little Spanish background, but until someone can actually speak English, it's taking a little time to make those connections too. I believe that technology is really important to the future of this situation, this issue. And I think that in the future, I think we're going to find some synergy there.
What about like cultural barriers? How do you overcome those? Because each country has their own culture and then subcultures and different worldviews. And if we are going to build this global community and work together, how do we overcome those hurdles besides the language? Because that would be a bigger one. But like, even just taking the example of Lebanon, not looking at this as a crime, but as a family issue that should be resolved within family courts or the religious courts, or even within families itself. Like, how do you combat that in order to move forward?
I think this is where you need really good partners on the ground, people that understand the culture. So in Lebanon, for example, religious actors play an important role. Maybe you can convince families that parental abduction is a crime by going through the sheikhs and the priests, etc. In Japan, that wouldn't work. It's not a religious community. So you need people on the ground, not just know the language, but know the culture and the mindset. So if I'm going to create an app for Japan, it has to be designed in a way that attracts Japanese. If it's for Arabs, it's different. So that's where it's really important to just partner with as many organizations and have, strong supporters and champions on the ground that can guide you.
That's what happened with me when I first started working at iHope. I remember I was telling my friends and my family that this is what we do at iHope. We work with parentally abducted children. We work with left behind parents. And almost all the responses I got were identical. And it was, what are you talking about? Like, parental abduction is not a crime. Like, that's their dad, that's their mom. So at this moment, it's your job to kind of gradually just try to break it down to them, try to make them understand. And by the end of the conversation, they're going to be overwhelmed. Not everyone is going to believe you or understand it directly, but most of them and most of the people that actually understand that, okay, there might be some truth to what you're saying, and maybe that all this time we've been living in a country that doesn't believe this is a crime, and they start telling you about cases that they heard about cases that they know of. So basically, this is what you have to do, kind of spread the word. You can do and this for this cause. You just have to spread the word, be very vocal about it, try to educate people, educate anyone that you come in contact with. And that's what we're trying to do here at iHope. And Find My Parent and I Stand and Shine the Light and you and everyone else. Every organization is trying to shed light to this cause because people don't know what it is. Most of you didn't even know what IPCA was until it actually hit you. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened with many of our clients. They didn't know each other. They didn't know what it was until it actually happened to them. And then they started searching about it. They started learning more about it. So I guess this is it. You have to actually just be vocal about it.
And this is where too, when you encounter, when we are trying to tell our stories and you encounter somebody who's never considered IPCA, they run through immediately these questions in their mind, having never encountered the subject before. Why would someone do something like that? Maybe there's a reason. All of these things that if there was better visibility on IPCA as a problem, an increasing problem, and to do with, economic migration, to do with various, questions of mobility and all the reasons that people end up in these circumstances. If they were exposed to that earlier, maybe it would help to destigmatize or to create greater understanding in the face of like a cultural gap or something too. Yeah, cool.
And how do you find an avenue or a platform to be vocal? Like, I have a hard time reaching out to, let's say, media, which is probably the best and easiest way to get our messages out. I feel like there's not an interest, and I end up giving up. Like, I've written letters at the beginning to so many media people. I just feel like I don't have that strength to continue. So like, where else could we look to make sure that we can keep pushing for IPCA cases?
You try to contact organizations that are actually stable on the ground, working in cases such as IPCA, such as I Stand, such as Find My Parents, such as Shine the Light. I know it's brand new, but like the people they know, their connections, they're important. So when you go to an organization that has a lot of connections, that has a very strong platform of education, you can put out your story from there, and they can spread the word. Not all media are interested in spreading your story because it's not the trend,
Right.
And more than that, when they do pick up a story, it's about this individual crazy story, and it's the uniqueness of the story that draws them to it. People read it and they think, oh, that's awful and terrible, and surely it must be solved, and it gets forgotten. Whereas we're talking about the trend, the generality of the problem, worldwide, and some of the invisible do. You were talking about reaching out to established organizations, and I've tried, and I know Jolly's tried as well, and I'm sure many others have tried to engage with well-established generalist rights. I'm thinking about UNICEF, about Amnesty International, and I have yet to receive any kind of response. And my sense is that they see it as kind of a family issue with two sides. It's complicated, it's too big, and they don't want to touch it. And that deprives us of access to what you're talking about. People who are resourced on the ground, who are already have a mandate for children's rights, for example, but they won't touch it. How can we combat that? And has anybody had any success in that sort of thing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I had my internet was breaking.
I'm just wondering. Just a question. Yeah, I wonder if anyone's had any luck in engaging existing large generalist organizations that do include in their mandate children's rights. Amnesty International, UNICEF, any of these.
We've done it. Sorry, go ahead, Rasha.
No, it's fine. You can go.
I've also had not great experience with like UNICEF and stuff. And I think it also comes down to funding. Who are their big donors? Are you attacking their big donors? I mean, again, it's behind the scenes, but it's all about money. We've had some success with the UN. We have done a complaint through the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, UNHCR. Okay, Human Rights Council, actually what it is, Human Rights Council, against Japan, because there is a mechanism that a country can be held accountable for grave violation of human rights. There's some certain, that country has to sign a certain document, and there's also for children, but again, there's certain treaties that the country has to ratify. To be honest, I don't think anything major will come out of it. What I would also look at is the private sector. I think the private sector can play an important role. You'll be surprised once you start talking to people how many people have experienced parental abduction, whether it be domestic or international. And I think the private sector needs their employees to be happy and healthy and ready to come to work and be productive. I think also there's a link with parental alienation. You can't separate abduction and alienation, and you have a lot more people that are alienated, and that could easily turn to abduction. We have a podcast that I would invite everybody to check out. I'll put the link. We host parents, experts. Each of our podcast episodes has right now more than 20,000 listens. So we have 600,000 people who have listened to our podcast, and it is spreading awareness in many languages: Arabic, Japanese, French, English, Spanish, on parental abduction. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Danielle, but can you give us the name of that podcast?
Your double. The idea is a child is made up of two parents and they're double. I'll put the link in the chat as well. I would
thank you.
invite anybody that wants to be on it. Our doors are open. You just email me. I'll put my email here. We'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast. So that's about reaching kind of the everyday people. And then another thing that we're working on is reaching young people. So this is the future generation. We don't want children to be alienated and or abducted in 10, 20 years. So we're working with some organizations like Ginger Gentile, who did a documentary called Erasing Family, which maybe some of you have seen it, and trying to get that screened at universities, schools across the US, across Japan. Because at the end of the day, when kids and young people start talking about it and maybe start thinking, okay, I remember reading about this. Now I'm going through a difficult time with my spouse. Okay, I'm not going to abduct my children. That's when we start making long-term change.
That might give us a good segue onto the technology just briefly. I don't want to wallow in this too much because it might just be me. But Danielle, I'm interested in, so you must have experience where the parent abducts and then tries to limit all contact. And,
okay.
One of our members experienced this in the 90s. And in the 90s, that was an impossible barrier to surmount. But as our kids get older and have more access to technology, and as the internet becomes more ubiquitous, the ability of the abducting parent to control the child's access to the parent gets really limited. And I have experience providing tools to my daughter to be able to contact me out of the control of her mom with some success. And I'm interested in your app. So the goal of this is to empower children who have their own phone, for example, to find their parents. Is that the scenario that you would be seeing for this?
Yeah, so right now we're launching mobile application, but we're considering also to do a web-based, so they could go to Chrome or whatever browser and you do it. So what happens is, let me use my co-founder Enrique and his daughter Malene. Okay, she finds our app. Hopefully the reason we call it Find My Parent was because we were hoping people would go to Google and search, help me find my parent, and boom, we'd pop up. She goes and she can create a profile. We're doing our best to make sure our app is as child friendly, but it's still a work in progress. There's a lot of design features for young children. When I say child friendly, I mean like as in design for them to easily navigate. She creates a profile for herself, and it's all information about her. She can put in her picture, where she was born, school she went to, and information about her mother, her father, grandma, aunt, uncle, everybody in the family. But right now she can do it in English, but we're going to be adding on languages. So the goal is to have it in, Japanese, Arabic, all kinds of languages. We don't want language to ever be a barrier. Her father would do the same thing. And let's say Malene, she didn't know about her father. She was told her father's dead, as is often the case, or he doesn't want you or whatever. She could still put information about her mother, her grandmother, her maternal side of the family, and herself. And obviously Enrique would know that about his ex-wife. So he would put that information in. And then our technology can match them two ways. One is data. So, you could put in 20 addresses, 50 addresses, maybe they're right or wrong. You could write Mohammed with a double M, with one M, it would figure it out. And facial recognition. And the facial recognition works on two fronts. One is you put a picture of Malene and he put a picture of Malene and it realizes it's Malene. And there's also kinship. Somebody puts a picture of Malene and somebody puts a picture of Malene's aunt and it realizes they're related, even though it's not the same person. That's what's also going to really help us in Ukraine, is that kinship. Okay, so then they will both be pinged separately. Malene, we think we found your relative. Enrique, we found your relative. Then they can message on the app if they want to. They have the control over allowing messaging, and they can stop that access whenever they want. Then we're going to be working on, and this is a work in progress, is we really need to build reunification support tools for parents, but especially for children, because my co-founder right now is going through the difficult process of reunification, which is it's not a piece of cake by any means. So we want to make sure through partners that those children and parents are given the right tools. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat. I recommend everybody to go. You can go to our website, express your interest. We're going to give you all the test flight, the testing version of our app. You can download it, but start using it. It will help us gather data on errors, on bugs. And if you have any features, you're like, oh, I wish I could add this information about my child that's not there, you can suggest that to us. And then in a couple days, we will go completely live with it. And the profile you created will stay on the app. So it's not like you have to recreate it once it goes live. And this is free for children and parents. Okay, will always be free for children. Always be free for children. So that is our technology.
Now, is it, if we like put all our information in this app, is it like gonna be public, or is it just?
No, nobody can search for you. Nobody can know. It's only the match is made based on like you and your son, or for example, but it's not public. It's all user generated data. So you are creating the profile for yourself. Okay. And it's all on a very safe server. So the people building this are like from the private sector, highly advanced developers. So it's on a safe, secure server. And no, there's no public search available. You cannot search for people. You can only match them using our technology. And you would know of the match. Okay, so somebody else wouldn't know. It's you.
Okay.
So can I ask what happens after they match? Like, what do you do? What's your next step?
Well, then they can message each other. But to be really frank, right now I'm trying to build a system, or like a support system, because obviously we're recognizing that both the parent and the child need some type of support, and probably mental health professionals to support them on reunification. I'm still working on that, but if anybody has any experience or knows of any NGOs or mental health professionals that focus on that, I would really love to connect with those people, whether that's like an online course or we refer them to an organization that can do one-on-one counseling. But I think it's so important that we also realize that reunification itself requires a lot of attention, and not just making the match. It's trying our best to build that relationship to maybe not what it was, but as good as it can be.
Danielle, I'm thinking one of the things that's been really hard for us to find is the perspective of survivors of this, children who have gone through it. And I understand that often people who've gone through this and managed to be reunited, they want to put it behind them and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they've agreed not to talk about it. You have this connection, this set of data, hopefully, that grows out of individuals looking to put their cases forward. Have you considered whether there's a room for a community to grow out of that, of the people who've kind of gone through it?
Yeah, we are trying to also reach these people, and we actually have a lot of them that reach out to us, but we also experience the same thing, as they're not super engaged, and a lot of them are very young, 22, 23, and just still coming to terms with it. I know I spoke with iStand last week, and they're organizing a survivors camp for children who survived parental abduction in July, I believe. So that'll be interesting to follow what happens there. We're also trying to work on, so our podcast has been very successful. We're trying to replicate that into a YouTube channel, but it would be for children. And it would talk about not just parental abduction, but like your parents are divorcing. What do? You think you're being alienated, all those types of things, to give children some resources, because that's very hard to find. And then we just do our best to empower survivors to get them to speak out.
Excellent. I see there were some comments. I'm just going to pause for a second again if anyone has any questions. I think Shelley had to excuse herself and send her thanks along. Okay. Those are the themes I pulled up. I don't know if anyone's got a theme to suggest that we could maybe riff on for a little bit. I see everyone's taking notes. Yeah. Okay. We don't need to use the full 2 hours, but I will say it's just a total privilege to have each of you come and join us with all of your experience, your different perspectives, your organizations. Randy, for driving all the way up here. And I think one thing that we can certainly do out of this is to stay in contact and to network a bit further. And I would love to see whether all of these groups can find a place to discuss kind of high-level shared concerns. And I'll be thinking about that for sure as we go. Elena, I saw a message from you there, but I can't read it from here. I'm hoping that the recording.
No, we're just asking about the contacts, the links, and then if we can, how we can stay in touch.
I'll be putting together some notes at the end of this, including all the links that come in the chat, if I can capture those. So I will be following up with a little bit of a summary of each session hopefully today. I can't promise. Is everything? There's some comments in the chat that included some links. Elena, is there anything particular that's missing?
Yeah, we can't see it from here, so, or any.
No, it's only about the links. Yeah, and Shelley says apology. She has to go into work. Thank you, and I hope to continue learning more and what your groups are working on. Thank you, Shelley.
I think Stephen wants to bring up a subject. Go for it, Stephen.
Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me. Wonderful that you have an international crowd here. I didn't know if you wanted to bring up some new subjects because we're all at different points in our cases. We have obviously a lot of cases going out of Canada, and we have cases coming into Canada. On respect to that, my opinion in all this is we got to make sure that our own countries, Canada, United States, the UK, wherever you might be, that it's a fair playing field. You know, we can't expect other nations to follow the rules if our own nations don't follow them. So, you know, what's good about these parenting groups is, you know, I always believe that you gotta invite both sides of the spectrum, right? Because everybody needs help, right? I think that's a good point. We should always remember that. You know, that kids that are kidnapped to Canada, you know, let's look into those cases because they might not be fair. It might be because the same reasons that we're experiencing, a judge in another land hasn't been trained or doesn't know what they're doing. You know, could that be happening in our own backyards? Could it be happening in the United States? Could it be happening in Canada? So with these groups, it's great that we continue to support both sides, right? Because we learn, and then we can use that. That's just one little topic area kind of moving forward. Let's keep, you know, our eyes open. Like I mentioned, we're all in different types of cases. I'm at a point where one of my sons might be coming home. And I'm at a point where, okay, so I'm reaching out. In my case, we've already gone through criminal courts. But as I reach out to global affairs, I reach out to the police, I reach out to the criminal courts, and I say, hey, I need some help. I need some financial assistance. And they're saying, oh, well, we don't know. We can't help you. We don't know how to do that. I'm shocked. You know, we're hearing about reunification just a few minutes ago. And I say to the police and I say to the victims' services, well, I might need some reunification services. And they turn around and say, well, we don't know where you can go. And I'm kind of shocked, you know, so I would like you to open your eyes that as we try to get our kids home, wow, it's an ongoing battle. Right through.
Sorry, if I can add to what you're saying, this is exactly what I meant when I was trying to say that don't turn to the authorities, turn to the private sector, turn to organizations that actually work on IPCA cases, because they know exactly what to do. They have the connections to the lawyers, they have connections to the centers, they have the connections to each other, and they can help you from one country to another.
Okay, but good point. But in Canada, we have millions and millions of dollars every year gets put into a fund. And we have a fund, it's a Victims of Crime Fund. So everybody gets a speeding ticket. Everybody that gets caught has to pay a fee into the Canadian system. So we have a law, and we have a law called the Federal Income Support for Parents of Murdered and Missing Children. There's a huge pot of money in there that's supposed to go to parents to help them. But unfortunately, no parent can seem to access it. So 2 years ago, there was a news report that came out saying, well, there's all this money and none of the parents are accessing it, but they've made it in a way where we can't access it. But this is financial support for parents. Here's the twist. My son is the victim. He wants financial support. Hey, fly me home. Hey, how do I get financial support for help, you know, mental health? And there is actually no system. And it's like, wow. So you've got all this money for parents that no one can access. And then I'm in a position where I can fly a kid home, my son home, and you can't help me because there's no system. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's some new things to bring up to the pot of here that, you know, things are not, it doesn't seem to be working well. And as I talk to, again, the police, or the police are supposed to be able to do this, bring your kids home. You know, in the case where we're bringing them home, there's no system. So I wanted to bring those aspects up in the radar as well, that wherever we are, all the different parents, we have different challenges, and it's never ending, right? So we have to kind of keep working and sharing ideas and bringing awareness. One of the ideas earlier too, I would like to say, is getting media. Listen, I've been doing this for a long time. You want media? And you know, in the media, how they work is, it's all about money, right? So challenging wise, when you got a story coming out, or an abduction case going out, or a case that kids are coming in, you piggyback parents with that case. So for instance, my son comes back, we grab a bunch of cases that also highlight them, because the news media is going to jump all over it, and we're going to say, hey, make mention of these other two cases, because then at least we're bringing more and more awareness. It's not just a one-off. We don't want the one-offs. We want to show it's a systemic problem. So that might be also a solution to try to drive some media awareness. But thank you so much for everybody, what you're doing today.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. 2 years ago, when I was first doing my research on this and trying to network, it's the stories that involved 2 or 3 parents that really got my attention. So there's some really good examples of that out there. So talking about funding for parents and resources, I mean, Air Canada used to have a reunification program, and that was canceled. And I think that having solutions to those problems be kind of the good graces of a company like Air Canada just shows that there's no solution, right? I personally have experience with the Crime Victim Assistance Program in British Columbia. And I do have funding currently and over the last year for some counseling, which has been really wonderful for myself and my family in just staying able to function. But to get them to fund me in this situation where it doesn't fit any of their easy categories, it took a lot of work to get that done. So I'm trying to capture and document cases or examples where maybe there's a resource that kind of matches you, and if you approach them, they might say no. But if you approach them and say, yeah, but so-and-so did get support here, or we can provide some tools for how to ask in a way that they understand, there may be some access to that money. And I know Jolly in Ontario has had some experience with this too.
Yeah, I had a Victims Abroad unit. It's part of the federal government. So I have never heard of this. And when I asked Global Affairs for help, or if there's any kind of counseling or anyone that can help me, they said, no, we don't have anything. They gave me a name of like a nonprofit or another organization, but said that they couldn't help me because when I was stuck in Syria, I lost everything when I came back. Anyway, I met this person and he works for Victims Abroad. And through them, even it was like 3 years after I was back, they gave me enough money to, I had to pay for my flight back out of Turkey to Canada, which was first class. I don't know why, but they refunded me the money for that. And then they also gave me enough money for some counseling, medical assistance if I needed like massages or acupuncture, which I did. And like, I think the limit was $5,000 to $7,000, but in different areas. And I could look into having it increased as well. I didn't go back to them. I think I'm okay right now, but my case is still there. Like I can go back and access it and request more funding or more help if I needed it. It's there. It's just that program is not widely advertised.
Based here in Canada?
It is. It's a federal government program. Yeah.
Jolly, can I ask something? For this program, is this program victims abroad? Like how do they define victims abroad?
So for they have a whole kind of category, and like Alec, they have to kind of like maneuver around different things and find a way to get me in, because I wasn't really considered a victim in the sense that they look at it, but then I honestly, I'm just drawing a blank right now, how he actually managed to get my profile to fit into victims abroad, but usually they look at cases of like theft, like people who have had things stolen or their credit cards, their money, they'll fly them back home. They'll get them, you know, get their stuff. They'll buy them like a cell phone while they're still abroad. Cases of rape or assault. They look at people who are traveling abroad and are victims of like something in the weather.
A disaster.
Weather, natural disaster. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, with my words sometimes.
Yeah, but this is in relationship to the parents who are
So
victims,
for
but not
me,
the
when
children
I
who are
was stuck in Syria, I had lost everything, right? Coming back home, even though I went to Syria on my own account and I had all of my legal documentation, I wasn't considered a victim in the sense of like losing anything or losing everything, but then the mental stress, I think he kind of navigated through a system and considered that mental distress on me, and that got me the status of a victim abroad.
Mhm.
Like I was a victim abroad, but they don't really look at kidnapping. Or like I wasn't kidnapped. I did the kidnapping.
Elena,
How do you explain?
Yeah, I wonder if Stephen, if the children are considered for that program as well, because they are considered victims abroad.
So I think the children would be, if my boys were with me, definitely they would have been no question asked. But because my situation was a little different, where I took that risk knowingly what I was going to get into, so I couldn't be the victim because I was doing something. I knew what I was doing, what I was getting into. I think he told me my children would have actually had access to a lot of more funding if they were with me.
And in my case, I've not pressed criminal charges because if I do that in Canada, it's going to sink my case in South America because they don't consider parental abduction to be a crime, and they would therefore refuse the return. So, and I'm also trying to protect my daughter's ability to return to normal. So, you know, turning around and having her face criminal charges immediately is it's got to be balanced against the need for a normal to be protected. But in the case of the Crime Victims Assistance Program, they don't consider supporting somebody until you've demonstrated that a crime has been committed. And the way they normally accept that is by you pressing charges. So when I was meeting with them in the first place, I was able to say, here it is in the criminal code, but no, I haven't pressed charges. And their response was, well, then you don't qualify, right? And so this is where we need to basically either be lucky, and I was very lucky and I was persistent, I would say, or we need allies in these programs who understand things that wouldn't apply in their normal day's work. I mean, the idea that you would be pursuing funding for a crime without pressing charges, all this kind of thing, for their normal ledger that they're working from, they wouldn't consider you. And so we have to find a way of getting over that and having them recognize the overarching situation, the child's rights, the human rights, the international context, and they aren't going to. So there's too few of us and there's too many places we have to talk to. So we need to build precedents, strategic litigation in a much smaller sense, like Rasha was saying. I want to just touch on one thing quickly, which is language. And Jolly mentioned culture. And this is one of the really big challenges that we have to do. It's I've had to sort of teach myself enough Spanish to work legally in the course of this. And I know a lot of folks who face, for example, translation fees and charges and legalization. And if you're dealing with a cultural gap and a language gap at the same time, the chances of you making those decisions in your case that you have to make early on correctly across all of these insurmountable challenges just drops to near zero. And I'm wondering if we can draw some recommendations or connect with organizations or find some tools that can just decrease the chances of the language gap in particular being a problem here. The legal culture in South America, for example, in the country I'm dealing with, is very paper-based. And so I'm lucky if I get a bad cell phone shot of a legal document, which is impossible to translate because it's just a photograph. And so there's no alternative there but to be able to read that language. What are other people's experiences and what kind of tools have been helpful?
That's where the global networking that I was talking about and Danielle mentioned comes handy. So each organization knows its own context, it knows its own language, it knows its own culture, and they know who to contact and what to do and where to go. So they kind of spare you to go through the whole trouble of you doing all the effort yourself and reaching out on your own and trying to like figure out maybe they're good, maybe they're not. They kind of filter out who the good lawyers are, what they're going to do, who's more experienced in family law, who's more experienced in IPCA cases. And they'll be like the link between you and the legal case going on. So I guess this is going to be like the best tool to be used in terms of language barriers, to have organizations all over the world connect to each other to basically just kind of be a link between parents and their children and their legal team and the judicial system and all of that.
And I will say, barring that, if you're able to find a good lawyer in the country you're dealing with, they'll be able to make those connections for you as well. But to find them,
exactly. That's why we're trying to do that, starting from the Middle East, reaching out to the West, reaching out to Europe, reaching out to Japan, to China, to wherever, to Australia, in a way to kind of connect everyone together and make it easier for left behind parents to actually know what to do. So you have all these organizations that most of them are not heard of. And you're just kind of popping out. Every time you research, you find someone new. Every time you research, you find a new case. And instead of just having to go and fight it off on your own, trying to find your own lawyer, trying to find everything on your own, they're going to be the link between you. And that's what we at iHope were trying to do when I mentioned the global network of advocates and organizations.
I can honestly say, like, from experience in the last 7 years, so much has changed and it's gotten so much better. So Mr. Alayubi will be my 5th lawyer from Lebanon right now. It was so hard to find one to begin with and to like find a trustworthy one. And like, even if we go and Google right now IPCA or International Parental Child Abduction, like I can find more information than there was 7 years ago when this happened. And granted, when it does happen to you, you're in shock. So you don't really know how to navigate, what to look for or anything. Now that I'm in it more, I find like it's been easier to find the information and to get what you need. It's still a struggle in some issues and we're still working on it. But I think like organizations like iHope and Find My Parent and Shine the Light, I Stand, hopefully us, and reunite.org and from UK and all these other organizations, if we can start to coming together, I think we can build a beautiful and wonderful network that will represent all people.
Exactly. Like take your organization for example. I mean, you were a single left behind parent. When you first started, you didn't know what to do. And then you found someone who was like you. And then you started comparing your stories and comparing what to do. And then when a new left behind parent came, you started telling them what to do, how to feel, how to actually like deal with it, who to contact, what to, So basically what we are trying to do is trying to do that on a bigger scale in a way to involve lawyers from other countries to actually know how, like trustworthy lawyers to deal with your case, to handle your cases, instead of actually hiring a lawyer and not knowing if they're going to rip you off or not.
Yeah.
And this is done on like a voucher system, not voucher system, but essentially to be considered, you'd need to have a reference from a parent, for example, who found that person helpful.
Well, usually also the embassy would have a list of lawyers that you can contact. So your first reference is to contact the embassy and they will put you through the list and then you go through the list.
Honestly, the Lebanese embassy would not give me any lawyers in Lebanon.
Yeah, I guess it could be country specific. And I think when I was looking at, they also had reunite.org.
Yeah.
They had a list of lawyers in different countries. I don't know if it was exhaustive list or not, but perhaps those were the ones that they've taken from the embassies maybe.
Just to make a suggestion too, each country will typically have some sort of an envoy to the UN, or they'll be active with the Hague, or some sort of involvement where the country will send representatives on behalf of child's rights. And if you can find and contact those people, they can often give you a pretty well curated list of folks to contact. The embassy list of lawyers, I'm never sure whether, I mean, some of these I've seen, it's fairly clear that it's because the lawyer themselves has put their name forward to be added to the list. It doesn't mean they have any real experience or that you can trust them.
And to add that about the lawyers, we found in Japan, the lawyers listed on the US embassy website were literally like terrible lawyers, like basically scamming parents out of money. So when we met with the embassy, we wanted to have some real kind of easy wins to feed them, you know, because we knew they were going to say like, oh, we can't do this. So we asked them if we could suggest names that should be taken off their website. And they were very open to that. So that's something you should be doing to help other parents. And when we met with them, we also, and this is something you should ask Global Affairs, is we asked if we could be listed as a local resource on the US Embassy website in Japan. So if you can get your organization as a local resource on the Global Affairs website, just brings you more parents, more power.
Honestly, it's one thing I think Alec was mentioning we discussed yesterday, and we plan on bringing that up in our meeting. Because as it progresses, as more cases come up, it'll be also beneficial for Global Affairs to have them come to us, because like Alex said, we do welfare calls. We check up on people. We engage and try to build this community and try to help each other out. And I think where Global Affairs lacks, we kind of come in and like the compassion department, we know what that new parent, for instance, is going through. And it kind of releases pressure on Global Affairs to get started on a new case, because I remember how frustrating it probably was for my caseworker to answer all of my questions and don't always have the answer. And at the same time, it builds a kind of a connection or a relationship between us and them.
Exactly. And it's an easy win. And because you're Canadian, you could attempt to reach out to the Canadian embassy in these countries to try and engage with their ambassador in Lebanon, for example. But our success was in the fact that we came in as an NGO. They refused to meet with individuals that were non-American for sure, and individual cases. They wouldn't let us talk about individual cases. So now you have an NGO, you could go try and meet with the ambassador or at least the consul in Lebanon and see what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good for me when I went to Lebanon too, and I had called a few times to meet with them or to ask for help. I didn't get a really great response. You're right. Like I knew I was there, but like to set up a meeting was just difficult.
Yeah.
So now that
so you angle it as we're an NGO, we want to look at larger policy reform. How can we work together? And that's going to be, we can talk one-on-one about this. I had a specific strategy for the US Embassy because they were very difficult to meet with us.
Yeah, I would love to actually.
Jolie, Stephen is asking if you have the link for victims abroad. Maybe you can connect with Stephen, send the link.
I have Stephen's phone number. I'll send it if I find it, but it's on the federal government website.
Yeah.
Danielle, if maybe me, you, and Jolly, we can have a Zoom meeting later to discuss the strategy plan that we are talking about. I think that would benefit us as well. That
Absolutely.
would be amazing.
Yeah, and anybody else affected in Lebanon or interested could join in Lebanon specifically.
For sure. If you don't mind, Rasha, if you can just maybe give me Danielle's contact or give Danielle my contact, and we can set up like a group chat and decide and figure out a time on on the side. I don't want to take too much time from this meeting right now.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have about 15 more minutes. And Justin is just joining us.
All right. Hi, Justin. Either Justin's on mute or.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Good. Thank you so much for joining.
No worries.
So just so that you're all caught up, this is towards the end of the meeting, but we have iHope from Lebanon, and we have a representative from my parent also from Lebanon on the phone call. And we have Randall, who's next to me right now with Shine the Light.
Yes.
Do you want to just give like a little introduction about yourself and just your background on your story, maybe just so that everybody is up to date with what you've been through lately?
Yeah. So my name's Justin Coots. In July of 2021, my daughter was kidnapped and taken overseas to Turkey by her grandparents, who are still actually residing there. They're not back in Canada yet. My struggles were quite extreme when it came to receiving direction or proper instruction from, say, the Canadian government and the authorities here as to what to do or how to, move forward with trying to get my daughter back in the early stages. And it just seemed very much a struggle for myself and anybody involved when it came to getting the proper direction. A lot of my success of returning with my daughter was by my own choices and by making my own leaps and bounds, at completely ignoring the police and the RCMP here in Canada advising me not to go overseas because it's too dangerous to go by yourself and so on and so forth, and just let the system kind of handle the situation. I wasn't willing to take that as a reasonable answer, so I ended up packing up my things and heading over to Turkey myself, and I spent just over a month there by myself, backpacking around Istanbul, Ankara, which is the capital city over there, and made some really good contacts myself. I was able to hire legal representation from Turkey and have them pressure the Turkish authorities to actually take this situation seriously. Up until that point, my story and my efforts were pretty much disregarded, mainly due to international laws and having other countries recognize that the Hague Convention is in the process of being handled. The applications were done. All my legal transcripts and documents had been translated and sent to the essential authorities in Turkey. However, they weren't still able to take action due to certain loopholes in the convention that didn't allow them to act upon anything because they were all allegations. And because they hadn't actually faced charges here in Canada, there was nothing the Turkish police or anybody other than the central authorities would be able to do. So it took me roughly about a month to get all of that sorted out. And when I finally got an answer back from the central authorities in Turkey that they were going to start investigating more heavily and that they were going to start taking it more seriously, that's at that time I ended up coming back to Canada for a 2-week period to clear out my home, basically sell all my possessions and head back to Turkey, at that point not knowing when or if I'd ever see her again. Fast forward, the grandparents, at the help of my pressure and getting the Turkish authorities involved, they finally applied some pressure to them and got an answer from them. And I was back on a plane within a week after that, I believe it was, and back over there negotiating a peaceful resolution and having them more or less hand Tegan over to myself at the courthouse in Turkey. Through all of that and everything, it was 90% my dedication and my pushing and not taking their answers as they wanted me to sit back and just wait for the public system and the authorities to actually do their jobs. It never would have happened. There was a good chance that they were trying to get across the border to Egypt. We were afraid at that time. And they were just biding time in Turkey until they could get their passports and their citizenship into Egypt.
So again, with Justin's success story, we have another woman named Rakaya, and we have another woman named Paula in our group. All of them have been success stories, but without the help of the Canadian government. And I think that's our biggest issue navigating through IPCA.
Agreed.
That there's a risk in that, which is that a lot of these are settlements privately between mom and dad, and in some cases, I know in Jamie Phillips' case, for example, she negotiated a return home with her kids and had to give up so much in the process because the leverage is all on the side of the abductor. It's a hostage negotiation, and if you're left to negotiate a return, it doesn't mean that things stop there, and you have to cut so deep and give up so much in order to make it happen. And after some years away from our kids, we'll go there. And it's not justice, you know. So Justin, I just wanted to say, we followed your story while it was happening, and I'm really happy to make a connection with you here. It was evident right from the start that you had people on the ground at home, fundraising, spreading the story. You took the risk of going immediately, and you felt the urgency of the situation, as we all did, but you didn't expect the government to also feel it, and so you acted. And I have to say, I wonder if I could have done things differently, knowing now the lack of urgency that everyone feels, and knowing that those first weeks and months are just critical in terms of anyone doing anything ever again. And so hats off to you really for achieving that.
Justin's success story involved a lot of like networking and powerful social media, and like I really wanted to talk to you, Justin, because like I just saw I think I actually was introduced to your story because it popped up on my Facebook feed somehow, because it's related to other things I post. And
right,
like you were there, and your networking was just like amazing.
Thank you. A lot of that has to do with my career that I've been doing for the last 15 years. Was I'm a parts manager for a truck repair shop for heavy duty trucks. So logistics and networking, and that's what I've been trained to do for the last 8 to 10 years of my life. So naturally, it just came out in me, and that's my personal nature, is to not sit around and wait for answers. I want answers now, and when I couldn't get what I felt was a reasonable answer, rather than just sit and wait, to me that is not an acceptable answer. And I was as best on the ball as I could in the situation I was in, and knowing that getting eyes on rather than having other people's opinions was the most crucial step, was making sure I could get there myself. And number one, look at hiring. My biggest fear was doing all of this networking over the internet and not having a face to a name, and not knowing if this other legal representation on the other side of the planet was even going to take me seriously or just take my money. That was a big portion of that, and knowing that in the back of my mind, and over the years of doing the networking and meeting new people, and once you can put a face to a name and feel comfortable with that person, I wasn't ready to hire somebody and just put them out on the street and say, go look for my daughter. So in a lot of ways, it was a lot of, we'll say the police and the investigators were pushing me not to do those things because they were worried about me messing up their investigation. Well, your investigation wasn't turning anything up. And in this day and age with internet and how easily it is to communicate and contact people here, they really weren't pressuring in the way that they needed to help parents. And they have, like you said, no urgency behind the matter of, they treat children as a possession and not a person.
And we're told to trust, to wait, to be patient, to have faith. We're not given information. When we are torn to shreds, we're told to stay out of the way effectively and to trust. And we're not given any information on progress. And we're told the lack of indication that you get on progress doesn't mean that things happening. And we have every reason to trust that there's more to the system than that, and there isn't. And I mean, it's
That's
not. We need to be kind to ourselves, those of us here who have not had your success story, because it's not for lack of effort on our parts, right?
Absolutely not.
Trust, and I'm so sometimes frustrated and ashamed of Canada in this regard, because it misled us. It really did. And
absolutely, I have never, until this happened, I was always one of the proud Canadians, or, you know, thinking we live in a country where they're going to back you up or have that sense of urgency when something happens to you and your family, and to just be put in a file folder and said, you know, wait for our answers. That's nothing a parent ever wants to hear and sit and just dwell on all day in and out. You know, I can see by the emotion at the table that, you know, it's definitely not an easy thing. And I my condolences. I've been there, and unfortunately I am, and I say that unfortunately my situation, I've got my daughter back, and there are lots of people that haven't, and it's just not fair. It really isn't fair.
I think like also another issue we need to address with the Canadian government is the transparency, because like I was told they're working on my case, they're having meetings, but I never actually saw the proof of those meetings, or like the minutes or the date and time. And that's like another thing too, is that they keep us on hold saying that they're doing something. But what are they doing, or are they really doing what we're expecting them to do? And
Right.
like like I always thought Canada would have my back no matter what, you know, like I could lean on my government, and I realized I was very naive.
if I can ask Justin, and it's okay if you don't want to say, but how's Tegan doing?
Believe it or not, Tegan is doing as well as she can. To be honest, she's having her challenges and her emotional ups and downs. But, you know, a lot of the time right now, she just wants to be a kid again. She just wants to forget what she's, you know, been through and move on as quickly as possible, as children do. They live in the moment. They are not the ones that, you know, prepare for the future or do anything. She just wants to be an 8-year-old daughter. She wants to be a kid again. She doesn't want to be stuck in the middle of all of this. And, you know, through my travels and through my experiences of meeting people through different support groups and parents left behind groups, that a lot of, it's not just Canadian citizens that they're looking away from. They're also our government will also turn a blind eye to applications from outside the country, people who have moved to this country or fled to this country and are using Canada as a buffer because they know that they're not going to step up and kind of stand on top, and they're willing to put their noses down into the sand just because it's too much work or it's not beneficial on their end of things to fight with another country. I've got multiple contacts since I've been home that have reached out to me and have asked me for, you know, help, or what did I do that led to my success that they maybe didn't do or haven't tried. And as you mentioned, it's those crucial first couple of weeks to months that is the most absolutely crucial. And I find myself very fortunate that I was in a position of where I was. I'm not the most financially stable person. I'm not rich by any means, but I was able to have a decent job that accommodated me. They gave me 6 months leave without any questions asked. They held my position for me when I came back, more or less. You know, like, so financially, I believe that in a lot of ways, the combination of the government not doing what they say they're doing behind closed doors and people having access to that financial help to get them through those first crucial months are two of the biggest letdowns that a parent or anybody can face in this situation.
We're at the hour, so I just want to pause for a second before I wrap it up. I see a few comments coming in. Again, we can't see those, so if anyone would like to raise a question or add a comment.
Yeah, there were just a few links that Danielle recommended. So for parents, Canadian parents, and then also children adopted to Canada. So thank you, Danielle. Yeah, and then Stephen said it would be good to document and learn about Justin's case, as more people would like to hear what he did in his case. Agreed with Justice.
Yeah, and Justin, maybe some of us can catch up with you at some point to try and capture some of this. We've got a few places where we're trying to document what's worked, what hasn't. And of course, you'd be welcome to join us in any way that you can.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I can I can put my email, or if you want to contact me through WhatsApp or something, we can go that route.
For sure. Yeah.
I put it in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but we'd love to host you on our podcast. Like I said, we get 20,000 listeners, most of them left behind parents. So it'd be interesting for you to share your story and, you know, some of your tips and advice to that wider platform. So I'll drop my email here one more time. If you want to meet, I'd love to discuss that.
Thank you.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I really don't mind that we end on Justin, on your story. I mean, it's a positive story, and that helps to have some of that to leaven the difficulty of all this. And I can say that this week, our commitment is to take all of these stories and all of these perspectives to try and boil something down out of them that we can convey to the government, to the folks on the vigil, to the embassies, and make sure that some of these things that you weren't given at the outset, that we weren't given at the outset, that were so pivotal to our kids' futures, that someone hears it. So I'll be in touch over some immediate things, Justin, but thanks for reminding us that this is a personal issue. It's not about the laws, it's not about the UN, it's about all of those things, but in support of us raising our kids and helping them to have their childhoods. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jess.
Yeah.
If I can say, please, maybe Zainab, if you can contact me, fill me in on the details of your case. Maybe we can help you legally, because same context as Lebanon. And if anyone would like to share their story with us, I'll drop my email right here in the comments. So if anyone wants to reach out, thank you for hosting. This was a wonderful first conference. It was very educational, and I'm sorry for the parents who didn't get to get their children back, and I'm thrilled for the parents that did. So thank you again for all the effort. It was wonderful, honestly.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I just want to also mention today is the renowned internationally as the International Parental Child Abduction Day. So it's great to have this meeting. I want to thank Rasha for your time. I know this was really short notice and you came through, and Danielle, you as well. We got to learn so much about both of your organizations. We look forward to like working in the future with you. Thank you, Randall, for driving out and kind of surprising us last night as we were coming to the hotel. We found him from Shine the Light for abducted children, for the kids. Thank you, Elena, for your Zoom account and for being present, and Justin for your account too.
And Martin and Stephen walked in.
And
Yeah. I'm sorry if I missed anyone.
Thank you, everybody who came today.
Thank you so much. Time. Yeah.
You made it very special.
I just put my email down in the chat there for anybody who wants to be able to reach out to me here. As well as I need to put a big shout out, thank you to Martin as well. He was one of the ones that contacted me shortly after Tegan was taken. He's been in contact with me more or less ever since, and you know, we've been chatting back and forth about his situation and my situation, and how everybody in the room here and on this chat has been affected by all of these things. And that's one of my biggest drives right now is getting life for me and Tegan back to kind of normal. And then and then I'll be focusing a lot of my time as you guys are on trying to help and work with other parents and other people to help success, because without the help of the community as well, socially and emotionally, I very undoubtedly wouldn't have been able to do it all on my own. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
Well, thanks to you all both.
Thank you,
personally
guys.
for the work that you're doing. We will be in touch.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.